Hi, I'm Brett Parker, multimedia specialist for Snack Food and Wholesale Bakery. And today we're showcasing Wanderlands, a pecan-based snacks mix which uses unique flavor combinations to play upon a consumer's olfactory sense so that snack can evoke the feeling of a specific location. Here to discuss this with us is Jane Ko and Sofia Rovirosa, the founders of Wanderlands. Jane and Sophia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Brett.
Nice to be here.
So can you explain the initial inspiration behind the formation of Wanderlands?
Sure. My background is in winemaking, but I also grew up on my family's pecan farm in southern New Mexico. And so when I had the opportunity to go back and use my family's pecans in a product, I really drew a lot of inspiration from wine, and specifically the concept of terroir, a sense of place or somewhereness that wine can bring to life. And the other thing that I do is I live to recreate outside. I love to hike. I surf very poorly, but enjoy it. And just love time out in nature. So I wanted to kind of bring that to life in a more literal sense with food. And so I had this idea to make a pecan-based snack that smelled like the desert after a rainstorm and tasted really delicious. And so when I started working with Jane saw that idea and really took it and turned it into a vision.
So your products use flavor combinations that appeal to our olfactory sense to evoke the places that inspire us most. Can you elaborate on the idea of olfactory sense and how specifically a food can evoke a certain place?
Yeah, sure. I can speak to that. So my background actually, is in neuroscience. I studied neuroscience for many years, and actually went into marketing for most of my career, and have always used neuroscience in when I think about marketing and food design. But what was really interesting about this particular, about Sophia's ambition to launch a snack that evokes certain places and at a certain time was it really tapped into sort of that neuroscience background, which is it started with the understanding that most people don't realize this, but probably I would say 90% of flavor is actually aroma driven. And it's actually what we call retronasal olfaction, which is the aroma molecules as you're chewing the food in your mouth actually go up the back of your mouth into your nose. And that's what determines a really large part of flavor, because really our tongues only taste sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. A lot of what we experience in terms of flavor does come from aroma. So we really leveraged that particular fact when we started to design the food. And then the other really interesting thing is that we know that aroma is really powerful in terms of evoking memories. And in fact, it's the only sense that is, I would say, is the most closely connected to the memory centers of the brain. And so this is why when you smell something, it takes you to a certain place. You smell cookies baking and you suddenly imagine yourself in, your grandma's kitchen, right? And she's baking something for you. And so we sort of leverage these two things in the way that we approach food design, which is to say, what do these places smell like? And how can we mimic these smells with ingredients that taste great? So that then when you're actually eating this, you're getting all these little clues, almost like aroma clues as to where this place is. And it sort of triggers these memories in your head as you're eating and makes you think that you're somewhere else, somewhere where you're not currently sitting.
So speaking to the 2 years of research with recipe development, with unexpected ingredients, textures, and aromas, did you guys make any discoveries in your research that surprised you?
I think there have been a lot, but one of the things that really has stuck out to me was how do you translate an aroma in nature into a flavor that's really delicious? And so initially that was one area where I felt like we got stuck a bit and it took, some trial and error. But ultimately, it required both of us to go out to New Mexico and to collect smells in nature and determine how do those translate over to food. And ultimately, I've got to give Jane a lot of credit for that. She had a chef partner that we brought in. Her name is Safo Patsis, and she grew up between Australia and Greece and just has this really rich knowledge of spices and ingredients. And she was a really key unlock for us in terms of coming to her with, a feeling that a place evoked, the smells that it had, and how to turn that into something that tasted really delicious.
Mhm. I think one other thing, just want to build onto that is sort of, that how to actually evoke a certain place, it's actually really complex. And there's a really sort of complex array of aromas. And so when what was surprising to me was actually how many spices and ingredients we had to bring together in order to create that experience. And so, one of the things that's really unique about our snack mix and our nut mix is that, usually in other nut mixes, like there's probably like 5 ingredients in there, it's usually the nuts and then, they oftentimes throw a bunch of sugar, a bunch of salt, and maybe some spices in like pepper to make it spicy. But when you actually look at our ingredient list, it's just got this just amazing symphony, I would say, of different ingredients, and they're all there purposely to bring a particular aromatic profile into the food. And even with our spice blends, what we ended up doing is that we worked with suppliers to create custom spice blends for us. And some of these spice blends can have, up to like 10 different ingredients and spices in it so that we can create this aromatic profile of these places in New Mexico. And I would say that, our approach is almost like, the way that in the fragrance industry or somebody who's, formulating a perfume, would take. And we really thought about, hey, what are the base notes, and what are the middle notes and what are the top notes? So we drew upon a lot of, sort of fragrance, category practices in the formulation of our food. And this is where I think working with Sappho and then, really understanding the different aroma molecules within the different ingredients. So for example, like juniper in the desert, has actually has limonene in it. So we said, hey, what ingredients have limonene? And we realized that, fennel actually shares some aromatic molecules with juniper. So that's why we used fennel, in our Mesa After Rain SKUs to mimic the smell of juniper.
Now, did your work reveal any foundational principles a snack maker should always have in mind when crafting a nut mix product?
One of the things that we really believed in when we started out is that, we both were really anti-mindless snacking. And we felt that a lot of snack mixes, and especially nut mixes out there, were pretty uniform in that, you sort of start to just eat mindlessly, and you're not really engaged, in the eating experience. And that's always, in our mind, a danger to overeating, overconsumption, and it's really not what we wanted our snack to be. So I think, we went in thinking, how can we really create something that encourages mindful snacking. So from the visuals, so it's not just the aroma, but the visuals and the texture of the food also is very, very sort of, engaging and interesting and complex, so that, you're really involved in sort of every element of the food as you're consuming it. And a lot of this is taking inspiration from, how, and this is from Sophia's background of how you would taste wine. So, so we sort of wanted people to snack kind of like they would taste wine, where, you would actually take the time to look at it, to swirl it in the glass, to smell it before taking your first sip. And then after you take your first sip, you're sort of, like then thinking about the notes that you're tasting. We sort of design the snacks to be enjoyed in the same way.
Now, are there any other specific locations in the world with an essence you wish to infuse into a future snack product?
There are a lot of places that we're inspired by, but at this moment, we're really focusing on New Mexico. I think people have this misconception about the state and thinking that it's just desert, but in fact, it's really diverse. I mean, you have the desert, you have grasslands, you have canyons, alpine regions, caves. And so I think there's just more exploring for us to do there. And it's been really inspiring to work with Jane and to see New Mexico from a set of fresh eyes because I grew up there, and so some of it is very beautiful, but getting to see it through somebody's eyes that had never really been there before, and kind of gone on these crazy road trips, got to see the state.
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico is amazing. It's one of those I had sort of no idea until I went there with Sophia and saw the places that she was inspired by and the places that these flavors are based off of. They are real places in New Mexico, and to experience them was really eye-opening. And there's so many other places in New Mexico that we want to feature. In fact, we're already working on our next SKU and flavor. So we won't tell you exactly where it's based off of. It's still in the works, but it's not a desert, it's not a canyon, and it's not out snowy woods, but it's somewhere completely different. So we're really excited to sort of bring the essence and the aromas and flavors of these places to everyone so that they can enjoy, even if they can't go to New Mexico. And then, past that, I think we definitely are interested in other wild places in other parts of the world and parts of the country. And so it's sort of limitless what we can do.
Sounds wonderful. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Jane Ko and Sofia Rovirosa of Wanderlands, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brett.
And thank you all for watching.